Thank you, Can Corla. The Minister told us she recognises the challenges facing schools in regard to funding. But there's only one way to deal with that, and that is to increase the levels of funding. And unless we say principals and teachers are making up the figures that they presented to us, and I don't believe they are, then, as I said, a very significant increase in funding is essential to be delivered in the next budget. Now, listening to the Minister's speech, I have to re-echo what some of my colleagues have asked. Are we talking about the same education system? She talked about the fact that our pupil-teacher ratio is now at a historic low of 23:1, and I recognise her efforts here. But the OECD average is 20:1. All we're asking is that that ratio comes back to the average. My colleague Deputy Connolly spoke in detail about the absolute need to enforce the Education for Persons with Special Educational Needs Act, the EPSN Act. While enforcing legislation is not as headline-grabbing as providing extra funding, we know that this legislation, if enforced, would provide a legislative basis for the delivery of SEN supports to those students who really need them as of right. And that's absolutely crucial, and how our system should and must operate. Minister said there's a review of the EPSN Act. It has commenced, but when will it report? And crucially, when will the government implement the Act itself in full? We need answers on this. Now, the Minister told us she has employed extra numbers of deputy principals, but the reality is 1,700 middle management roles were lost in primary education 15 years ago, and so far only 500 have been reinstated. She also spoke about the capitation grant. I mean, capitation is back now to pre-2011 levels. I mean, that's not progress. That's not even catching up. And I don't think that those figures tell us everything we need to know about the crisis in primary funding. Minister, if there's one thing I want to ask, it's this, and I want to appeal to you to reinstate complex needs as a criterion and allow school principals the opportunity to input this information on the pupil online database. I mean, why won't you trust principals? Why won't you trust teachers? They know their students. They have the data. We know students take years and years to get a diagnosis. The CDNT waiting list is getting longer and longer. Students take years and years to get treatment, but those students are still in our schools. They are in mainstream classes, and many do not get the proper supports until they're in second class. Minister, if there was, as I said, just one thing in this motion that I would push harder for than anything else, it's that, because this must change. And it comes down to the fact that I believe the department and the NCSE do not want this information. There was a box that could be ticked on the POD that has been removed. So now there is no way for schools to send this information to the department. That has to change. Finally, Minister, there is a crisis in primary education funding. There is a chronic, ongoing underinvestment in the sector. And for the sake of our students, our families, our teachers, our principals, indeed the entire system, government must absolutely ensure that the level of funding to primary schools is significantly increased in budget 2025. Minister, I'm saying that nothing less is acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Harkin.